So I know it might be blasphemy to say that I've never watched The Truman Show, and I didn't know much besides the premise. Oh, damn it, did I freaking love this film. Released back in 1998 and starring Jim Carrey, it follows his character's life, Truman Burbank. Now, this might sound simple enough, and it is for the first couple of minutes, until you realize that his life is being broadcast 24/7 for the whole world to witness, and he's the only one who's not in on it. The way this is done and carried out is the most intriguing thing to me, and witnessing Truman's slow descent into madness is gold. For example, right at the very beginning, you have the in-film director, Christoph, who gives this piece of monologue with us. In it, he details how he dislikes the ability of actors to portray genuine emotion and how he found Truman to be the perfect substitute. By having Truman as the star actor and also blissfully unaware of what's going on, we get to witness how he genuinely reacts to events in his life, the good, the bad, and the mundane. Everything from him getting ready for the day, greeting his neighbors, being at work, and more. At work, Truman starts to make an inquiry over the phone about heading to Fiji and meeting Sylvia Garland. At first it seems kind of odd, but it makes more and more sense as the movie goes on. Not too long after this scene, his boss asks him to deliver on a prospect for him, which would require him to take a ferry on the way there. The only problem with this being that Truman was deathly afraid of water and wrestled between his work obligations and his fear for a while. Eventually, he caves into his fear and leaves the docks and bounces back home. Somewhere along the line, we get a flashback sequence about why Truman is so deathly afraid of water. This is because when his father and him sailed out to sea in a boat, some rocky storm came in and gave them trouble, causing his father to be sent overboard and drown. Now, Truman commences his next day in the exact same order until he's almost at work. He's approached by this scraggly and dirty looking old man. It isn't until a minute later that he realizes that this homeless looking man is his dad. By the time he realizes this, his dad is escorted by some strange people in suits and a dog onto a bus and is whisked away for good. Now, up until this point, Truman's life had been fairly normal. Now imagine this happening to you and how terrifying that would be, as if there was some glitch in the Matrix. Clearly puzzled by this, Truman tells both his mother and his wife about it, and they dismiss him as being paranoid and crazy. One thing I want to note in between the narrative of the story is how the film is shot. Everything from how Truman is viewed through buttons, doors, and his own car really adds to the sense of uncomfortability. Peter Weir really knew what he was doing here, and it showed. And we haven't even gotten to the best parts narratively of Andrew Nicole's writing. Throughout all these moments I just mentioned, you'll see Truman getting watched on the TV, whether it's by people at a diner, the cops at a police station, or some middle-aged dude in his bathtub. It's simultaneously odd and interesting to see not only how engaged these people were with watching his life, but also commenting on it and being heavily invested, even have it cut into their daily lives. I know nowadays we have streamers, YouTubers, reality TV shows, and many other forms of entertainment in which regular people follow the lives of others. But the key difference being here that Truman didn't sign up for any of this. He's just living his life as normal until he has these weird incidents in his life, unbeknownst to the fact that the whole world is watching him. This was terrifying for me as a concept. I wouldn't be surprised if this inspired Black Mirror, spoken by someone who hasn't watched the show. So I couldn't have imagined how terrifying this was to watch back in the late 90s to early 2000s. We also get another flashback showing that despite Truman being married, his wife Meryl wasn't his first love. Rewinding the time back to when he was in college, Truman, with one of his best friends in the band, Marlon, was messing around until he laid his eyes on this pretty young lady, Lauren Garland, who was also that chick he was referring to on the phone about Fiji. He falls head over heels for her, locking eyes for way too long, getting lost, and enjoying her presence. This went great and all until this was broken up by this klutz who tripped all over him. This clumsy girl ended up becoming what we know now as Meryl, who definitely had the hot for him. We get some more flashbacks of Lauren and Truman when they're studying for their respective subjects, and Truman asked her out on a date. She was hesitant for quite a bit, but made an alternative offer to have that date that instant outside instead of that weekend. They run out to the beach and have fun together, being young and in love. Lauren keeps telling Truman about her fears of they and them watching the two of them together, and coming to get her. Keep in mind, this is Truman before his father's reunion, so to him, it kind of sounds like nonsense, and understandably so. Shortly after, she voices her concerns. A strange man pretending to be her father whisks her away, and understandably, this weirds out our star, Truman. He also finds an old picture of him and his wife at their wedding day, and notices something odd. He finds out that she crossed her fingers on that day, which leaves him worried. Not long after, he follows her to her workplace after the day in which he noticed the people on set behind the elevator he was taking. He gets there only to find out that they're up to weird things. Keep in mind, every time Truman makes plans to go to Fiji, there's always some reason as to why it can't happen. Whether it was the bus being stalled, no available flights in the time frame he wanted, and more. He also wants to go to Fiji since that's where Lauren asked him to meet her there. Back at the house, he confronts his wife about his bizarre reality, and he notices some odd things. Besides her ignoring him, she starts doing an ad read for a coffee in their household, while they're the only two people in there, and when he tells her about this and approaches her, she says two things. These are, how can anybody expect me to deal with these things? And somebody come and make this stop. This would be fine and all if there were other people there, but this type of dialogue comes off as haunting, and Truman realizes he's caught her in the act. Eventually, she calls up his best friend, Marlon, who's also in on it and manages to come in at just the perfect time, coincidentally. Marlon and Truman have a heart-to-heart, and Truman comes to accept his new reality, new to him, and lives this weird life. One day, Christoph asks about him to his cameraman, only to realize that Truman duped them by setting up a decoy to have it appear as if he had been sleeping that day. They send Marlon in the home, only to realize Truman burrowed his way out and escaped. This legit had me so glad I shouted aloud. This also caused Christoph to go into a frenzy and have everyone, and I mean everyone, search for him on patrol. He even cut off all the cameras for a period of time, which was considered blasphemy, since not only was it the biggest show of all time, but it was also meant to run 24/7. They eventually find Truman out at sea, escaping by a boat, the one method you would last think him to use. Things seem like they're finally looking up for Truman, until you realize these people are in charge of his life and surroundings. Christoph has his people change the weather to be horrifically stormy and aggressive, even willing to kill our boy in the process, all so that he could have things under control. Things seem dire for Truman since he has trauma with water. You know, with his dad dying back a while ago. Thankfully, Truman manages to pull through and survives the storm, and even manages to make it to the edge of the world / set. He finds the exit door, and just before he leaves, he hears Christoph talking to him. In this exchange, we have one of my favorite scenes. The use of the blues and the contrast between what was real, like the water, and what was fake, such as the sky, behind him was absolutely beautiful. The music was absolutely heavenly as well. Back to the note of the sets. This film has some of the most beautiful skies I've ever seen in movies. I haven't seen many movies, but I stand on that point for sure. During the director's exchange with our main character, you hear him trying to bait Truman, talking about there being nothing for him on the other side, how it isn't any more real than his world, and how he'll be safe here. It felt like a beautiful metaphor for how you can view life, because there is some element of truth to that. Life is much more simpler when you follow the rules and guidelines set before you, such as go to school for X amount of years, get married, have kids, get a stable job, and repeat that for generations. But once you step out of that and start to dictate your own future, you start to become responsible for yourself, which can be daunting. Imagine how terrifying it is to have no guide on the specific things you want to do and the path you want to make for yourself. It sounds simple, but that's something that means so much to me. Instead of some lengthy speech, which was what I expected from T-Man, he gave us something else instead. Sweet words, in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Now, for those of you that haven't seen the movie, I'm aware that hearing this out of context makes no sense whatsoever. However, in terms of the film, it is absolutely priceless. This is because that quote is said within the first few minutes of the film when he greets his neighbors on the way to work in the morning while he was unaware of the situation. However, now it has a different connotation with him being free from this prison and truly getting to say goodbye. It hits different. I'm not gonna lie, I was expecting this to be half decent considering Jim Carrey is in it, and I've only watched him in The Mask, which was about 2 years ago for me, but he had me sold. But I didn't expect to love this as much as I did. While The Mask was absolutely funny and made me laugh a ton, this movie felt cathartic and relaxing in a weird way. So if anything, I hope that statement makes you consider to go and watch this one. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in whatever I post next. This is Black Sugar 11.